Yes, Leanne, we may begin.
Okay, thanks so much. Thank you. Welcome everybody to this first of our RETIG webinars for 2022. My name is Leanne Brown and I am the current chair of RETIG, which stands for the Research, Education and Training Interest Group. And our webinar today has received an overwhelming response in terms of the numbers of people, which is very encouraging. And I really think that we're going to have a very interesting and engaging webinar. Now, before I introduce our speaker, I'm just going to give a little bit of background to this webinar. As you know, the theme of the webinar is research proposal and academic writing. And both of those two things, the writing of a research proposal and doing academic writing, are very important aspects of any research, whether it's honors, postgraduate, master's and doctoral research, whether it's just writing publications such as journal articles. And so our speaker today is going to give us from his own personal experience insight into and tips on how to write a successful research proposal, and also to do proper academic writing. Now, just to give you a bit of background on the webinar today, the webinar will focus on the characteristics of an acceptable research proposal for either submission to faculty, as in the case where it's for academic purposes, or a submission to donors if you are submitting a research proposal for funding purposes. So the speaker is going to look at the differences between the two, the academic research proposal and the one that's geared towards funding, and look at why they are both important, and look at how you can transition from an academic proposal to a funded research proposal. And then he's also going to focus on academic writing and drill down to the specific characteristics that of academic writing that are shared within the academic writing environment. Now, our speaker today is Dr. Gift Dafuleya from the University of Venda. He is a development economist. He conducts research predominantly on state and non-state social protection. He lectures at the University of Venda, and he has led commissioned research for numerous international organizations and government departments in Southern Africa. He's published his research in journals such as the Review of Household Economics, as well as in book chapters and policy briefs. So without further ado, I'm going to give over to Dr. Dafuleya to introduce himself and to do his presentation. I just want to remind everybody that to keep yourself muted during the presentation. And if you have any questions or comments at any point, please just put that in the chat, and myself and Marupeni Ramabina, who is the PRO for the RETIG committee, he's also here with us today. So the two of us will monitor the chat, and then after the presentation of the speaker, we will go into question and the question and answer session. So hopefully we will have at least about 30 minutes for that. and then we can wrap up the webinar. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Dr. Leia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leanne, and thanks to Liasa and RETIG for actually inviting me to participate in this webinar. I'm actually told that it's the first for the year, so it's really interesting to sort of set up the tone, and hopefully I'll do. It could be that I may fail and, you know, the year starts badly. But I think to just get started, I was thinking to myself to say, how do I structure this? You know, typically researchers or academics come from a diverse background to an extent that even if you meet two economists who are dealing with development issues, they may tend to differ, and rightfully so, you know, because we all have our beautiful minds and the way we think is typically different. I know mostly I'm talking to librarians, and I'm sure that the research issues cut the divide, and even if I use my own experiences as a development economist, there will be some things that definitely resonate with librarians. So I'm happy to be invited, and yeah, let me share my screen. I think for today, I've just decided to present, you know, on using a PDF instead of a PowerPoint. I thought that it could actually serve me well. So we want to look at three things. I'll be mostly biased on the first two. Then if time permits, we will indeed maybe dwell much on the third one, which is academic writing. So the first will basically look at the characteristics of an acceptable research proposal. You know, research proposals are written mostly at postgraduate level for the faculty, and then at maybe postdoctoral level, usually for funding. We typically have also, you know, some people who write for funding even when they only have masters or even below. That is, if they are used to the donor world, funding world, particularly those who work for NGOs, because their nature or their nature of business is to look for funds, and so they have to be skilled at writing research proposals. With the faculty or scholarly proposals, typically you'll find these at master's level as people try to get into faculty, at times as they try to convince the faculty that, you know, my proposal will, you know, it's a cut above the rest. Please take me, I'm worth the while. So looking at the differences between the two tends to be critical, because my experience, limited as it is, has shown me that we usually don't split the two, or we don't bifurcate. By that, I mean, because you'd have done a research proposal for your master's or for your PhD, you then want to use the same characteristics of that proposal for funding purposes. And the result is you usually get no response. Then we start to question ourselves whether the two are different or not. If they are different, how do we bridge the two to move from sort of a scholarly based research proposal to a research proposal that looks for funds out there. At times, you may not want to bridge the two. You may basically want to transition, particularly if you are not in the academic space of teaching and the like, and you're not doing the business of typically writing articles and all, that proper research. You may want to transition after having your master's, after having your PhD, to say, okay, as I am in the library, how do I write a convincing research proposal for something to be funded in the library and then, get donors? So that's another component that we may try to look at. Like I've said, the academic writing will basically fall at the end, and I think I wouldn't take a lot of time on it. Once we have done our research proposal very well, somehow it will automatically fit into academic writing, and I'll try to just show how that can be. Right. So given this focus, I'll be really happy to always entertain the chats so that it becomes interactive. But because I'm sharing the screen, at times I may not even be opening the chat box. So I would allow Leanne, always feel free, should there be a chat that actually says, I'm banning here, may he stop and we just discuss what I would have been saying, or to expand on something, for instance. So I'll be free to, to pause. I'll be flexible enough. So I'll be happy that the chats be monitored by you, Leanne, and you let me know if there's something very much pending. Thanks for that confirmation. Okay, so how have I structured my presentation? As academics, we usually have discussions around research proposals and academic writing turning into normative. They are always normative discussions. And by normative, what do I mean? I mean, we typically teach what ought to be or what is ideal. So by that, I mean, we are highly theoretical, and so we tend to then use textbooks. We tend to use theory to inform us on what ought to be. In other words, what ought to be a good research proposal, what ought to be, a research proposal that may change the world, for instance. We then build on this ideal, and focus on it so much to the detriment at times of what exactly is out there. I'll be using the word positive for that. So my presentation will mostly be a positive approach, where I actually want to discuss with you what is actually there. What is the reality? You will realize that once we ask these questions, evidence gets to be thin, on the ground, unlike on the normative approach. With the normative approach, I know I'm talking to librarians and people who can archive very well. It's easy to just get online right now and you type a successful research proposal, and thousands, if not millions of results would come. But trust me, I did that as well. What typically comes is what ought to be. What is actually there in terms of a successful research proposal is close to 0%. universities in their repository systems do not currently include research proposals. I would want to be challenged here by librarians, because I know the repository systems lie with you, particularly in South Africa. And I'll be happy to be challenged if we have a university that now has a repository for accepted project research proposals. Could be at master's or at PhD. Instead, we usually have the thesis or the dissertations, once completed. So as a result, you'll find that even for faculty purposes, students would struggle to come up with a good research proposal, simply because those that have been successful before are nowhere to be found, right? Instead, they are given these templates of what ought to be, what is ideal. As a result, I found many proposals just following the template to an extent of losing logic. Highly possible. But what about the proposals that have been accepted by the faculty? If they are out there, students will find it easy to sort of look at them, see how they have been, and then they actually, it makes it easy for them to then, do theirs. I did my studies at UJ, and after I completed, my proposal, and I was midway into my PhD and about to finish, my supervisor would constantly come to me and say, "Gift, can I send your proposal to a prospective student? Can I use it?" And most often I was like, yes. And he started ringing a bell on me to say, already this is part of the work that I have submitted to a university. If there is space, why shouldn't we putting these so that students or prospective students may always see proposals that have been admitted into the faculty? So for that reason, I had to actually take time to be precise on what I want to cover, right? So for that reason, I will be covering what is actually there. What is the reality? What do we see? More than the normative. Maybe because I'm also a teacher, here and there, I would bring the normative, but mostly I will try to be, to follow a positive approach. Having said that, and having also claimed that we rarely have, project proposals or research proposals out there, although the situation is changing, and I will demonstrate soon, there will be some instances where I would have to use some of my experiences, because there are not so many out there, and it's not like they're the best, but it's what I also have. And where it has been successful, I'll be also indicating that, and where I've had my failures, I'll also try to be honest about them. So I'll start here to say, based on what is actually there, what do I see as the characteristics of an acceptable scholarly research proposal? On average, if you Google the templates of universities, I tried it on that. It's been massive work. I tried to get as much as 15 and summarize them. They will tell you that a good proposal includes, someone put it in an abstract or an executive idea, introduction, problem statement, objectives, significance of study, literature review, methodology, references. That is fair and fine, all good. We know that, we can find that. But what they rarely say, on an acceptable scholarly research proposal is the following. One, and it's common, but not so common. a good average mark for your honors or your masters can easily land you into, a project proposal or a research proposal that is acceptable. It's funny how bias can easily, make someone even, make someone see a positive thing on a research proposal, even if it wasn't as good. But because they know that, wow, this student is a flying student, they can, always be like, okay, which means we can always correct this proposal and it will be good. Universities, or even NRIF for that matter, would require 65. So typically, if you're at honors level, if you're at master's level, just do it very well. Fly, and if you get high marks on average, it is going to easily land you, at a place where your research proposal is acceptable. I've seen it on 3 occasions where at times people are like, but this student is a good student. What happened on this research proposal? Then people are like, maybe, the student applied when there was no time. But because look at the masters, well articulated, supervised by top class supervisors, so it works. So I've seen that. I want to just point that out, simple as is. 2, no matter how good or poor your proposal is, it is best to get in touch with perhaps what we may call a respectable member of the faculty before submitting your proposal, right? You could reach out to them through what we may call a concept note, where you just write, a concept of what you think, and you would have identified them because you are seeing them as part, of those who are in the area that you are interested in. And then you just tease them. Some of them, they really want to have, postgraduate students. Some of them have funding. Some of them, they are so much on demand such that they may make you wait for 2 years. I recently attended one article writing workshop where the presenter was actually saying, with me, if a student comes to my inbox, I'll tell them that, there are some on the queue. Why? Because that researcher will be now having lots of research funds. And if you write to them with a good idea, on the concept, they may then, embrace you. Once they've embraced you, the research proposal may not be top-notch, may not be scholarly, and for that matter, you're still trying to enter into postgraduate research. So it's hardly expected that it will be top-notch. So that way it becomes acceptable, simply because you now have this respectable member of the faculty backing you up to say, yeah, I think, the whole idea of the concept or the research proposal is good. There's still room for improvement, which I think can be done, and I can be willing to take over this today. That way, your research proposal is accepted, funny as it may. And then the other thing that I've seen work, good communication skills, both on emails and even when presenting. At times, one may have something that is written very well. If you don't have, good communication skills, people may just have an attitude when we are presenting. And trust me, you don't want to have any members of the faculty having an attitude, because 1, they start firing with questions that they even can't answer themselves. 2, they spot on your proposal or in your proposal, elements, as small as it were, but they will magnify them so that they really show you that, your thing is an impossibility and therefore we cannot accept it. Highly possible for that to happen. But if you have, let me use the word, charmed them, have those good communication skills, chances are high that they'll be like, okay, captivated, and therefore their chances, your chances of having your proposal accepted becomes high. So usually at masters, for me, I have to be honest, I wrote a proposal and I don't even remember how good it was because it was just something written. Then along the way, things started changing. And as I was reading, I even started changing a lot from what I actually proposed with the guidance of the supervisors. At least when I reached that PhD, level, things had become different because I was lucky enough to have published 2 articles. And when I reached out to my PhD potential supervisor, I wrote to them, say, I've tried to work, on this, blah, blah, blah. I've been doing this. They're like, oh, wow, they were fascinated. And then that way, at least I knew what I wanted at that time. So even my proposal became solid, thanks also to the guidance that I was receiving. But most often than not, we start research, as novices, we wouldn't be knowing a lot of other things. So it will be hard for you to come up with a strong, successful scholarly research proposal at that stage. So what you need, in the practical sense of the word, are these 3 things as well. There could be more that we would have experienced, and I'll be happy that, we put on the charter, maybe following up on them later, to see the experiences that we have also had on how, we have become successful in getting into faculty. So that's the aspect on faculty, right? Let me come to the one for funding now. With the one for funding, because, it's so diverse, I had to just pick examples so that I don't have a one-size-fits-all approach. You see, with this one, it's easy to have a one-size-fits-all because usually there's a template that they'll say abstract, introduction, etc. But with this one, I'll just pick 3 or so examples. This one is something that I was just looking at. It's not something that I will even apply myself, but I liked this as an example. It started prompting me to think, further on what I knew as acceptable research proposal for funding. This is from the US Department of State, and I've put the website. I'm dealing with librarians, I'm not plagiarizing. So they've put this in the tender for global database, and they're requesting what they call statement of interest. The funding is up to about 13,000 USD. Let's just assume one is interested in such a research, and you have to put on your proposal. But now it comes in a form of statement of interest, right? So already the naming is not research proposal, but actually we're dealing with the research proposals in a way. So this is the example that I want to use. Their call will close on March 15, right? And then I've got my opening statement where I say success is defined by the acceptable criteria on the call for proposal. Now, this is very critical, while they call for innovation here and there, usually if you follow the criteria that they give, I've seen it work. I'll be demonstrating soon why I've seen it work. So what does this call require so that we use it to then see what needs to be done? Then we could generalize from this case. So they are saying, please follow all instructions below carefully. A statement of interest that does not meet the following requirements, right, will be deemed ineligible. So typically, especially what I've seen with donors that I've worked with, one, they can be audited and things like that. So they then tend to be strict on the criteria. It has to be clear from the word on how they will be selecting the person that they are selecting. So here they then specify that the content of the statement of interest should address goals and objectives. So meaning that whatever you do, if you want your research proposal to be successful, make sure that you have put your goals and objectives clearly on this call, right? You may also need to put your outcomes and performance indicators and proposed outlines as stipulated. The safe thing to do, or that I've even done before, and I'm using that now to share with you, is to follow it as a child, a grade 1 child for that matter. You follow it religiously. Make sure that the criteria that they have put, it's all there. If you revise your submission, everything is there. You are not leaving anything to chance. The CV is a given. Now, how are they going to evaluate? So they are saying they will use what they call the program idea that you are submitting, and they're giving it 50 points, right? So I want to start from these 50 points, and I selected this example as the first because from many examples that I have or that myself I've dealt with, you will discover that the idea even than 50%. The idea is 50 points, right? So what does this say? It actually says that if you have a brilliant idea, an idea out of this world, but you lack capacity, right? You lack experience, you don't show ability to actually achieve your set objectives, you may still fail to come up with a successful research proposal. And I feel like that is very, very crucial, you know, because at times the idea needs not to be perfect from what I've seen, because a perfect idea without other supporting items is almost close to zero. You know, you will not pass. You will get 50, and then if you get 0 on all other stuff, others will get those. And you with your perfect idea, someone without a perfect idea who has gotten 30, but then scores very high on capacity as well as previous records, they may surpass you, and then they'll be given. So your project now will end up not being successful, your project proposal, and you'll be thinking, but I thought that I had an idea that will change the world. But you know what? It's not all about that. It's more than just having a good idea, right? Or a quality idea. Let me go to the second example. And this is where I now upload, you know, this talk of open access. And it's the talk is beginning to get into even, you know, discussing or letting these research proposals to be put out there, you know, for people to have access to them. And I think NIH is currently doing that. And I've picked this example from them. You know, if you go to this website for NIH government contracts, there is now a sample that they put for research proposals, and I've liked that website. It's a good one for one to be, you know, seeing how the successful research proposals have been developed or how they've been evaluated. For now, they are mostly on the medical side, you know, so we still don't have on the social side. There's a website, I think I wrote it somewhere in my notes, I'll check, the one that is currently having a call where they want, you know, people who would help them to start having a repository of research proposals. so that they are also out there. So I'm happy that the discussion is really changing, and it's changing fast, because it's an area that really is rarely covered, even online. So I picked this up, right? So it's a project that was, I think it was funded in 2017. It has been put on sample applications, as you see there on your screen. What I have liked here is not necessarily even the title and all, because I'm sure all of us can come up with a title that is good enough and all. But I've liked, the evaluators, and to demonstrate how the evaluators follow a criteria to grade proposals. If you visit that website, you will even see the criteria. So mostly the criteria had to do with the individual one, right? Of course, they would want to know your design and all, but when I was following on the strengths of much of the research proposal, I started, having evidence of the fact that most reviewers are particularly biased even on the person submitting the proposal. Yes, the idea will be looked at. Yes, the methodology will be looked at. But a successful one usually have the following strengths. I have picked just two. You could visit, there are quite many, but most of them, the strengths will be as follows. Let's listen to this candidate named Dr. Ribeiro. They are saying the candidate is outstanding. He has a PhD in epidemiology, and well, from a renowned university. So lucky guy. Some of us don't get to John Hopkins. He has published extensively in this area. I want to zero down on that. Most often, we want to come up with research proposals without having, a track record of what we can actually do ourselves. So typically, I've seen that if you try to first just publish, have your name just out there, that is also a plus, because if people are to search for maybe property rights in libraries, in African libraries, they will be seeing the name of Kagiso popping up. Pop, pop. That way, Kagiso becomes a leading light, because if someone tries to search for property rights in academic libraries, in African setups, the name of the person writing on that pops up. And now if this person is to put on a research proposal, it's most likely that, we are going to have output of what we require here. This person will deliver. Another important thing is the third bullet. He works closely with some of the leaders in the field. I cannot just overemphasize this, because at times, as we are emerging academics or, proposal writers, standing on the shoulders of the greatest is very key. I will soon be demonstrating a personal experience that I've had myself. So the evaluators also get to check to say, okay, who does this guy work with? Collaboration. Most often we want to go it all alone. I want to show them that I'm brilliant, I can do this all alone. But who you are associated with, in other words, your networks, can easily determine if your proposal will succeed or not. So then they conclude, Dr. Ribeiro will undoubtedly be a successful NIH-funded investigator, based on those strengths. There are some other strengths that they do put, but I had to pick on these because I've seen, that most of them, they're interested to say, okay, what does this guy do? Who does he or she work with? Then this one was also another review. The candidate is supported by an outstanding group of mentors. Yeah, this one is painful, because if you don't have a mentor ready, or a good mentor, it can actually spell disaster for your career. So at times, I think that's why, in terms of research, the painful thing is if your trajectory is going down, let's say your mentor is not outstanding, you're most likely to be less outstanding than your mentor, and your mentee is going to be worse than you. So as an institution, you're just going down. Whilst those who are on the upward trajectory, they will be having mentors that are good. Their mentees become even better because they have stood on the shoulders of the greatest. And these reviewers, that's what they also look at to say, who was the mentor? I was just shocked, to be like, okay, I have seen it was only me, but as I was reviewing all these practical proposals, I was starting to see a pattern, and I had to just sample these for you colleagues to see how important, who you are with matters. So they often say the lead mentor is recognized as a leader. So what does this tell us? It tells us that if you are applying for research funding, at times putting some names out there of people that are big already matters. To show that you are networked with them, it matters. Let me get to the third example. I'll now try to be fast because I'm seeing that my time, I've got up to 50 minutes. I've got this example, and this example, I responded to this call, and I use it because for me, this was my breakthrough to funded research. So what I'm realizing with this example is that, I want us to look carefully at the criteria that they'll be using for selection, and why I say criteria is important. The first one, they were talking of educational background. The second one, they talked of experience, and experience, they gave it even more points, 30%. Then the third, if you have knowledge of social protection. By the way, I'm a development economist who specializes in social protection. So in applying for this, I had to make sure that I state upfront these technical competencies that they require. My application did not even state a lot of objectives to say, I will do this. Of course, I did a design. So that proposal cannot be shared, but I could just beam it if we have time later on. I did a research design, which later on, when I asked to say, so how did I make it? After I got used to the colleagues, like, okay, your research design was good. And also stating upfront what you are bringing to the table, why you are worth the while. Let me put that, something that I did, the actual submission part of it, right? So I had to state up front to start with suitability to do the research. And this suitability was based on these technical competencies that they required. I did not start with those that this research is really changing the world. I've got the best idea so far. No. I had to just start with why I think I'm suitable, right? And these are the reasons that I gave in responding, right? So I said, one, I completed my PhD where I was researching on social protection issues. Knew they needed something on social protection. And by the way, that leads me to say, at times don't force research proposals in areas that you are not a specialist on. They'll always come. Yours will also come, because it just shows desperation. So when I saw that they need something on social protection and social assistance, then I was like, this should be my key holder. I'll also showcase that I finished a PhD on that, right? And I had to state that I developed a questionnaire and used econometric tools. Why? Because I've seen that in their social protection, they wanted someone quantitative. Two, I indicated that I have been fortunate enough to work with esteemed scholars, So at least I was not lying, you know, because if you lie, they would approach those scholars and they say, no, this guy is lying. I was fortunate enough to also have worked with them, you know, because one, my PhD was marked by this guy called Armando Barrientos, who is at the University of Manchester. And after I marked my PhD, he then requested me to be part of his study. You know, later on, if we have time, I'll show the website where I then appear together with others where I participated. So having done that, I had to then use him. He's a leading scholar, right? So I had to actually show that I'm networked with him. I have been with him. Some of us maybe may know Stephen Devereux is at University of Western Cape and also at IDS or University of Sussex. I'd also indicate that I've had a special issue with him, and as well as Marius Olivier. This one is a lawyer. I think he's at Potchefstroom as well as University of Australia. So I had to quickly write to them to say, I'll be putting you as my referees. When they agreed, I was so happy. So I had to put them up front. These are the esteemed scholars that I've worked with. That sort of brings, you know, credibility. I'm new into this. They may not trust me, but I know if they see the names of people in the field and that they can reach out to and ask, do you know gift? They may tend to trust me. And believe me, I was right. I got it right. I got this research funding, 2017. And thanks to my university, I was then given 6 months to go and do this. So it worked, right? What else did I put? I told them I have 10 years experience researching, you know, on some of these issues, particularly in Botswana, Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, and South Africa, right? And then I've also experience in working with primary and secondary data from some of the, you know, organizations, and I pointed those organizations. So this was my breakthrough to sort of UN-funded project. And I want to state something that is funny about research proposals. After this, once I did this, thereafter, you find that the network of other organizations, once they see, let's say, the publication that has come or the report or something, you know, and they are putting to say the donor, the funder was this, they just contact those people to say, oh, how is this guy? Then the next thing you see in your email, are you available? Can you please put something small? And when you're now doing the proposals, you are just doing them for the sake of fulfilling, you know, a requirement. So your proposal is usually scant. You don't even give much. You just show why you are very much critical, right? And then the rest, in terms of design, yes, you may give an indication, but some of those things evolve once you're now doing your research. So the proposals, even what I think or what I've observed, resolve a lot on what I have stated here. You know, if you are new and you want a proposal to succeed, show that you are standing on the shoulders of the greatest. Once you have become greatest on your own, then you can always, you know, be called. You're just called. At times, even if you put, they will like, what? Yes, applied. At least that's great, because we're considering to actually inviting. I do have invitations, you know, of doing research, and if time permits as well, remind me someone. There's one that I currently sit on that we're trying to put a financial proposal where we're supposed to host now the database, you know, of social assistance. I've been trying to look at an appropriate institution to do this. Now it's more than a year, but I'm grateful that there's an institution that will be housing this, and we're busy dealing with the financial proposal aspect. I should just be also sharing that later on. Right. So let me quickly move on. This one I won't spend much time, you know, because at times there may be no call for expression of interest, but perhaps in your library, you may decide to just apply to a certain organization. It could be international organization to try and get funding for a particular thing. That's also good. But in such a case now, that's where success is defined by clarity and relevance. You really need to be clear. You really need to show relevance, because there's no call, but you want to show them that there is something that is very important that they need to fund. In such a case, you will have to really talk about your organization, right? Include its purpose, missions, and all, even the financial statements and all, because those are typically required to just show that, no, you're not a scammer, you're not just there to milk them money. It's really for a relevant cause. So you really need to give a good background of your organization, give a project summary of why you think particularly your project is important and who will benefit, right? And then what I found to be very critical, particularly, is this evaluation framework or your project objectives put in a way that makes it easy for the readers to see what you intend to do, where we are, and where you want this funding to take you to. I've just given one example here, where your objectives could be something like your milestone at times. I've been working at these things at times. Even myself, I still get confused, because some would really want to differentiate between a research problem, research questions, objectives, aims, goals, they are all those things. But I think, to me, those are semantics. What will be important is what you then state. If you think it's an objective, or it's just a focus, or it's just a goal, but does it speak to the donor? Like, for instance, here I say to raise, that's a typo, to smooth income for vulnerable households. So that's what I wanted to write, to just say to smooth income for vulnerable households. Why do I feel like it's such an important thing to me as a development economist or as a social protection person? Most of the households in African setups are vulnerable. They don't have insurance. If they lose a breadwinner, things go haywire. The consequences are so dire. At times, even if they don't lose a breadwinner, if they lose a member of the family, they can spend on the funeral an amount that is equivalent to their yearly income. So this is critical. You raise that, right? And then you show the activities that you're going to do to fulfill that. So what do I need to do? I need to train communities, on governance issues so that they manage their group saving schemes well. And I need to link them to savings or insurance products. So I'm trying to be very clear on what I'm going to do as activities. My baseline, right? I'm saying currently our studies show that there are 40% chances that funds will be embezzled, in some of these groups that the poor use. So if you fund me, we expect to reduce this embezzlement of funds. And if it's reduced, their income will be smooth because they will always have money to fall back on. So that's just one example of what you may need to do. And in the library setup, you may know how, where is your baseline, what is your target. So you may always want to make that clear. All right, so those are the things, particularly for if you are not responding to a call and you just want to really convince the donor from nowhere, right? It's also possible. And you need to be very careful on your project design, particularly in stating how your organization has decided, to embark on this activity, its designs and things like that. Okay, so in sum, having said, talked about the acceptable or successful research proposal that is academic, as well as that is meant for donors, what are the tools? So the bifurcation is as follows, right? If you look at the academic ones, if you have a chance of looking at them, it's good to be technical in terms of language. Use that language in the field. In my field, like I'll be talking of risk pooling, idiosyncratic risk, things like that. It shows that you have the terms that are critical. In your field, you may also have the buzzing words, metadata, storage, archiving, property rights, and things like that. But for the donors, you don't need that. You don't need to use technical language. You need to be simple. Even a grade 8 student may read that and almost understand what you're trying to do. The execution for academic is still biased towards working independently. You need to show that, you know what, if you take me as your supervisee, I'm able to work independent. I won't be pestering you because researchers are busy people. So you want to show them that I won't be pestering you. Unlike for donors, that's why transition is very important, because first on academics, the emphasis is you are working alone. You are producing a PhD document that is 400 paged alone. But in the donor world, no, you don't need to be alone. At times, even if you're alone, you'll be given a technical reference group or a group that you will be working with, all right? And this group, you need to show that you are able to collaborate and have teamwork, all right? Is that a hand or something? I had someone speaking. All right. The budget, usually in the, something that has quickly come back to my mind as well. In the academic, it's currently changing. If you look at MIT, now they are PhDs. There's also some aspect of collaboration. You'll find students also collaborating maybe on one paper that they share and they include in their PhD submissions. So I think academics are slowly also seeing that, students have been finding it difficult to transition or bridge, academic writing as well as donor type of research writing. Because you are now so much used to sitting in your own box, Now when you are in a teamwork, you want your idea to fly compared to other ideas. And people tend to be bored by that. Guidelines, they are very much flexible usually in the academic world. In the donor world, I have found them, to be strict. It's good to be strict because they will be following also a certain criteria. Relevance in the academic is scholarly, right? That's what you need to prove. Usually for donors, you need to align it, your research proposal to their cause or to the cause that they support, which you also believe in. Expertise or expertise for the academic is usually prospective, which is why I was arguing to say your research proposal need not to be very, very perfect because it's said to be guided anyway. But for the donors, you now need to show experience. If you don't have enough experience, show that you are now associated with people with experience where you are also drawing, inspiration from. I'll leave the timelines for you to just read. Right, let me end with this one very fast. So the characteristics of academic writing, we can find them, we want to talk about being clear, and that's very normative to say, have a limited focus, be logical and all, But you find that journals, especially for those, that are sort of international, if you show that you are submitting a journal article where you had a research grant, I've seen it working favorable. If you submit work to claim that you have done research on your own, they will think you did it under a tree. But if it's under a research grant number and things like that, they are most likely to believe in it, So the practicality of writing is that if you write having had a grant, it's easy to publish in journals. That's why I've seen that, most of these big lights, they publish. Why? Because they've got grants and they've got something to write. Standing on the shoulders of the greatest is also key here. At times, academia is a club. It's easy for editors, because editors would know who is submitted. Even at times, reviewers these days, they would know, because we start with a working paper, it may be there online. And once it gets to a journal, they may review, who is this one? then they have an attitude, and then that way their review becomes a bit heavy. You will have to be extraordinarily good to convince them alone. But if you have stood on the shoulders of the greatest, you are starting with your supervisor, publishing with them, because they already know your supervisor, you know, the reviewers or the editors are a bit sympathetic because they know this person has produced before. Then publishing becomes a bit easier. Be as perfect as you can possibly get. You know, if you write an article and it's 8,000 words, if you are to read and reread, you should reread until you don't find any mistakes. Reviewers are vultures. They pounce on a comma and they'll make it a big deal as if, you know, it's the end of the world. So if you are writing, make sure you don't have any flaw. And for you to start, you know, being good at that, you need your writing academic clubs and live with lots of rejection. Of course, we do have these academic journals where you would easily pay and your and your research comes, your article comes out within weeks or something. I don't want to dwell much on that, but what I've seen is at times where you have published can also affect the research funding cycle that you will get, you know. Times if you have published where, you know, a lot of people have got respect for that. And these are the people who evaluate some of these research proposals because they are called to sit in a panel. They tend to then say, yep, this guy can do it. But if you're going for soft things where you want to quickly publish and they will be like, he's a chancer, then, you know, so the two do speak to each other. That's why I concentrated much on the research grants, because eventually they do speak to your writing. So live with a lot of rejections. If you get one acceptance per year, but may change your life, I'd rather say just go for that one acceptance than you have 10 that may never change your life. How do you get going? Write a paragraph a day. It has worked for me. So Chair, I've taken 56 minutes and I've exceeded by 6 minutes. I'm sorry about that, but I'm sure that we may have time for discussions now. Can I hand over back to you?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Dafuyela, for that wonderful presentation. You've given us lots of useful tips and guidelines for research proposal writing, and it was very interesting the way you brought in the research proposal for funding and looked at the academic and the funding proposal and how they differ and so on. So that is really given us a lot to think about. I just wanted to check. I don't see any questions at the moment in the chat. I see Marupeni has got his hand up. You can speak, Marupeni.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dr. Dafuyela. Yeah, just a few questions. The first one is interesting. I received an SMS from the person who is attending this session now to say, please ask Dr. Dafuyela about the budget speech for tomorrow. What are his views? Yeah, that's the first one. For mine, from my side, I wanted to talk about the research proposal. That as libraries, I think we'll hear from colleagues here. Do we publish or do we archive research proposals? Yeah, I think from where I'm standing, it's like we do not do that. So we don't know what happened to our research proposals there. And then what can you, Dr. Dafuyela, as academics help us? Can you suggest to libraries to say, start archiving the research proposals too? And also to say, can we also publish research proposals? Have you seen it happening before? So the last one, it was just a collaboration from an idea I had from someone now. Is there something like a collaboration for PhD, group PhD, like people who are 3 or 4 doing PhD together. If you come across it, does it happen? How does it work? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Maripeni, for those questions. Can I hand over to you, Gift, to answer those or to comment on them?
Thanks, Chair. And yes, Maripeni, I note those questions. So on the budget speech, I'm also waiting to hear what's going to happen, and I'm not a very good macroeconomist, so I may not be in the best position to, to project on what could possibly happen. But suffice to say that the budget over the years in South Africa has made sure that there is also a budget for funding. We, through NRF, a lot of funding has come, and I applied once at NRF, and they came up with good reviews, but we couldn't make the cut. So I know there's a lot of funding there that usually comes from even the budget. So if one is lucky to get funding from NRF, that's the way to go. I think even as librarians is to maybe check, how much component of the budget has gone perhaps to NRF and how much is typically sent to an area that has got libraries, for instance. So it could be something that, people may follow up on. Then in terms of archiving research proposals, like I said at the beginning, I haven't seen that. Yet it's very important, I think, for me, and what I have seen, is that it is critical that this starts to happen. Perhaps let me share this this website quickly with you colleagues on why this conversation now needs to get to where it is. If you look at this website, it's a website usually for open grants, so now there is a call for advisory committee participation. This call is interesting in that it is meant to address implementation of a repository of openly accessible grant proposals and funding guidelines. As part of this, they are also trying to make sure that from now onwards, these proposals that are granted, there is a repository also for them, because we rarely have such. And it is my thinking as well that, even as universities, if we look at our libraries, we don't have repositories for the proposals that would have used to admit students. And to me, it's a gap. It's a huge gap. I'm not so sure about other academics, but to me, it's a huge research gap because I've seen a lot of students fumbling with their project proposals or trying to look to say, then where can I get? Of course, I know there's this template, but they want something that is practical, something that is real, something that the faculty has accepted. And that's where the library comes in, because if there is demand for such, and believe me, I've seen it, I can look for emails where even I'm still in touch with my supervisor, by the way. Each time she shares my proposal, even up to now, she writes me an email, Gift, can I now share it? Or something like that. And I'm like, so this is a demand. Where is the supply? And libraries can create the supply by simply creating repositories for what they may call successful research proposals at faculty level. There may not need to be many, perhaps per each faculty there may be 3, and then they may be changed once a year if there is no space or something like that. So I feel strongly that, that is now needed, and libraries can do well in terms of seeing that this happens. So that's one thing. I can go on to share other websites where, one I referred to it to say where I got, some evaluations. They are now also putting the proposals because it's very important, I think. Then collaboration of PhDs. If you go to MIT repository, you may find these. PhDs are getting collaborated there. So what they usually do, from what I've seen, is, so if let's say it's a PhD by publication and they require 4 publications, 3 maybe individual based, 1 may be collaborated. The latest that I have seen, I will subject to confirmation, is 2 that these students collaborated on and 2 where they did individually and they passed. I will have to cross-check that. So if the PhD requires 3 publications, at least 2 will be individually done. 1 can be collaborated. No, it's still not a sort of a requirement, or let me say a force matter, or there's a good English word that has run away from me, compulsory to collaborate, but they've introduced it and I've seen it in the past decades. I try to follow their thesis that they put online. So they start, and I can always share with you some of the theses that I've downloaded from them, where students qualifying for PhD have actually collaborated. That actually makes it more of a lonesome journey than what it currently is. And people usually drop out at masters or PhD because they feel lonely. The supervisor is busy with his research or her research. And then before you know it, you are frustrated, you don't know what to do. But if you're with someone, at times the journey gets better. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Gift, for replying to those questions. I think it's, yes, your suggestion about librarians driving this creation of a repository for successful research proposals would be a great idea, and it's definitely something we must think about. As you said, there is that gap there. I see that Frederick has got his hand up, so I'm going to hand over to him to allow him to ask his question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to really agree with the idea of having a repository of research proposals, because I think my experience also is that that's the stage where a lot of students struggle, to put together a proposal. There aren't many examples there. Even if you know that there is a part of the finished PhD proposal which forms a big part of what was the proposal at the stage when the thesis is done. But it would be so much change that is different from the proposal that would have been initially submitted. So I think that will help a lot. And then the other point that I just wanted to check with Dr. Dafleya is, at what stage of the PhD journey, because that is my concern, does he think that there are mostly challenges for students? Is it at the stage of writing a research proposal? Is it the supervision in the middle? In South Africa, what is your experience of what are the challenges that are either preventing the education system from producing a lot of PhD students? Is it at the entry? Is it in the middle? Is it at the exit? And then also, I've seen that other countries have got these ways of having PhD students where there is already a team which is working on a research project, and they just invite people who want to be PhD students to come and be part of that project while working on their PhD, which speaks to the idea of being part of a team that is just spoke about now. Does that happen a lot here, or it's something that is not much in existence? Thank you.
Thank you, Frederick, for asking those questions. Gift, do you want to respond?
Yes, I may. I saw another hand, just that maybe we could take the questions and I answer all at one go, in case maybe they may speak to each other. If it's fine with you, Chair.
Yes, that's fine. Okay, I'm going to see there's another hand. Nkangwene, and you want to ask your question? You just have to unmute yourself. I see you're unmuted at the moment.
Okay, for the sake of time, perhaps I'll be answering, and once Kondweni is in a good space to talk or unmute, they will come in. So the first one is at what stage the challenges. Usually, I think it is at the beginning, you know. For faculties that require students to really present their proposal and do it right, you will discover that they will give you about 6 months to 9 months. So some, they don't register you within that period. Some do register. It all depends with institutions. I've seen that they do vary here in South Africa. Within that period, you know, it's a bit tricky because one, you need to prove that you are well read in an area, and you need to also prove that you are well, you know, the salt. You need to show people that you're now bringing an idea, and they need to admit you into their faculty. So at that stage, to me, is very difficult because one, research writing is still new to students. Of course, they would have done masters. If you have done masters by coursework, you are mostly used to theory, writing theory. Now you need to be very practical. And if you want particularly to get into a faculty that is top-notch or that are serious with research, you then need to prove to these, you know, gatekeepers that, guys, I'm worth being part of you. And to me, that's the most difficult stage. Why? Because we rarely have these research proposals, like we have already talked about that. And two, you are still a novice, yet you are expected to express a gap either in literature or in the world out there that you are trying to fill. In faculties where they are not very particular, at least you can always get in easily, but some, no, they would even make you present and do. That stage is a bit critical for me. It's challenging. Once you are in, I think the journey becomes easy. It's long, but becomes easy in terms of you now being able to research with ease without pressure. And what only gets to be difficult is that at times you are so lonely in the journey, one, and two, at times you are hurt by the comments. So you need to build resilience in you to say, you know what, this supervisor took me on board simply because they saw that I can do this. If they are commenting, it's not like they hate me. That hate of H-A-T-E, at times I fail to pronounce it right. So of course, so there is that part. There are those other minor challenges, but they can be dealt with because one, you are growing old, you can be resilient and things like that. So you can always manage those aspects. And you can manage the politics that also come into the field of PhDs and all. But what is critical is to look for a faculty that is very good and strong and get admitted there. Why I say this is because, like you saw on the other reviews, who mentors you matters if you are to have a breakthrough. Because you are going to stand on the shoulders of this mentor. If you choose someone who is not well published, who is not well known there, and you really want to be a good researcher who is known, you will be starting on -10. And you will be having 10 negative steps to deal with before you get to 0. And that's very difficult. But if you break through on mentors or supervisors who are published and are known, you ride on them, you also get known through them, then you fly, right? So that's why I say the most challenging stage is to break through in a faculty that will also position you to be among the greatest. Most dropouts, I'm not so sure on this one, to be honest. I may talk about our university because I've got dropout rates. Students drop out at proposal stage. They usually don't even finish the proposal. The supervisor will be still struggling to say, I don't understand your research problem. The student is failing to express it, blah, blah, blah. It gets to the faculty for examination, or presentation, it fails. People hammer the student ends up dropping. To me, that's the stage that I'm seeing, at my university. I'm not so sure about other universities for me to generalize, but I think it's something that is interesting to look at, to say, where do we have most of the dropouts? It becomes a critical question, like the whole of South Africa, not particularly one institution. And then if we see that the dropouts are particularly at this stage, what intervention strategies can we do? Then on the issue of research project and teams, actually that's the way to go now, and it's the stage that I'm trying so hard to also reach, as a researcher. I would just share quickly something with you. I'll just, if I may, just fast, to just show you that indeed this thing now works like that. And if you start attracting students that way, then we are getting somewhere. So if I open this for you, I'm trying to get there with this. So I'll just share this briefly, So it's something that we have submitted, and the good thing is they think this looks orderly, and we're now at a stage of financial proposal where the bosses will tell us about the budgetary confines. And now with this, this collaboration, what we're deciding to do is that once we get funding, we advertise for PhD positions. So any PhD who wants to come to us will have to just fit into our research thinking. So it's not a situation where we will be saying that you bring your idea. No, you come, fit also into it. It's a research area that you'll be liking yourself. You come, you fit into the research group, we fly together. So that stage has been reached by many other universities. That's why you find them, with these institutions where there are working groups. And if we are joining, you join a particular working group, then you may bring other ideas within a core idea that the working group is working on. That way we become better at doing things and even at research itself. So the only challenge is most of us emerging researchers who are just PhD holders, we don't have funding, right? We're not attracting good students. But if you have funding, you advertise, you attract good students, then you know that even later on when the student is publishing, you're also publishing. You have got something really to anchor on. So it's the stage that I'm just keeping my fingers crossed, such that if this financial proposal is accepted by donors, I will have, to advertise now. And once I'm advertising, it's not students just coming to Univen to ask for a place, but it's students who are really interested, one, in the money, but as well as in the research area that we are doing. I've seen it working at University of Manchester, where I visited, where parentos, they would have this huge working group. Everyone fits within the idea of social assistance, although you will then have your own innovation, but that's the idea. You have to be within the bigger frame, then you start innovating from within. I hope I have addressed those, and back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Gift. Yes, thanks for your comprehensive responses to those questions. I just wanted to check with Nkangweni, whose hand is up. Are you able to unmute? Otherwise, if you've got a problem unmuting, you're welcome to put your question or comment in the chat, and then we can respond to that. But if you just try to unmute yourself, you'll see at the bottom of the Zoom screen, you've got the mute option. So you can just click there to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a question about what Dr. Dafleya was presenting. You mentioned to have mentors, and you also made mention of scholars and specialists. So I would like to know if all of these mentors, scholars and specialists are supposed to be from the same field as the one I am. Like, for example, I am in the field of library and information science. Are they all supposed to be from this field? The second one, no call for grant proposal, but I managed to prepare my proposal, and then after completing writing my grant proposal, where am I supposed to send it? Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Nari. Gift, do you want to respond to that?
Yes, Chair. Thanks for the opportunity again. So I've usually had, you know, this thing where people be like, as long as, you know, I'm a PhD holder, I can supervise any field. Personally, I wouldn't want to talk about other academics on this, because some may have that prowess, you know, to supervise any field. But personally, I don't think I'll be able to supervise a student who's not in my field. I can only help, perhaps as a colleague or as a friend, to just give research ideas. So, oh, maybe, so what are you doing? But to get a person in your field, there are several advantages. The first one being, this person already know what is there, what is the extant literature, who are the leading lights. They know, because they have been in that field for more than 20 years. They are most likely to guide you very, very well. Two, they are mostly even published in that field, meaning to say they are a bit known, right? Three, it then works for you if you are to then stand on the shoulders of the greatest. But imagine if in the library sciences, I'm not even a librarian, I'm an economist. At least if I do maybe economics of the library, it's better. Then people will be like, so who was your supervisor? It was Gift. Then they Google Gift, and Gift is busy publishing on funeral societies. They'll be like, what is this? You know, with the internet, people check for some of these things. It's funny how people may just check the name of your supervisor and what they do. So if I were to give advice, I would say be supervised by the person in your field. You know, that way it's easy to have a research group or a working group. Then in terms of preparing a proposal that does not have a call, indeed, that's a possibility, you know, and it's only that it has to be very thorough. Like I've said, it has to be articulate enough, very clear, and show relevance. So now, where do you submit it? I think in the library, there will be some organizations, perhaps, that are interested in, you know, library issues. I know in your case, maybe it could be UNESCO, may be interested, you know, or things like that, where you may Google on UNESCO, look at their research unit, blah, 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 and then find someone to just tease, to say, you know what, I'm working on this, blah, blah, blah. If they don't respond, it's fair and fine. You're just starting. You lose nothing by writing. If they don't respond, fair and fine. If you're lucky, they respond, they'll even guide you to say, oh, the way we work here, you have to submit your thing there and there. Then you have a starting point on where to submit. So that could be That could be one way to go. So to identify where you have to submit, you need to really know your area very well. And then 2, probe them, get in touch with them with just an idea before even sending them your fully fledged research proposal. Tease them. Then if you find someone interested, say, oh no, you can submit there. Then you start the submission. I hope that was helpful. Over to you, Chair.
Thanks so much, Gift, for your responses. I see there was another hand up. We are running just over time, but I don't know if that person still wants to speak or to ask a question.
Good morning. This is Musa. Maybe I think Gift answered my question, but I would like to pose my question again. I just want to find out how can I make sure that the person that is going to be supervising me, like he keeps on emphasizing that those people must be maybe well-known people, so that your proposal can be likely to be accepted. How will I make sure that that person is well-known, or maybe has been producing a lot of articles? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Can Gift, do you want to respond?
Yes, thank you again for that. So now life is easy. So you want to do library sciences, you look for faculties that offer these, then you Google them, Google the person that is within the field. So now universities, they also try to put the publications of the person under the name, or if the university does not do that, like my university still does not do that, you can take the name, just plug it on the internet on Google, see what comes up, see the reports the person has done, the research the person has done. So you can now always do that, especially if you trust yourself that, I'm someone who really wants to make an impact and you think you have the tools to do so. So go for those who have made an impact ahead of you, approach them. They may have space if you're lucky, if you're not, because they're on demand. Some, like I told you, they may be like, okay, try me after 1 year or something like that, very possible. So you can always wait a time. So I think to answer briefly, I think Google the people that you may want to supervise, to have them supervise you. It's always better that way. Approach the person even before you apply, or as you apply. Once they embrace you and they think, wow, I want this person, it becomes then easy to get into the system. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Gift. I don't see any more hands or chat messages, so I think in view of the time, we should wrap up this webinar. I just want to thank you so much, Dr. Dafuyela, for your interesting and thought-provoking presentation, and for engaging with all the questions and comments from those that are attending. And yes, it's been a really worthwhile webinar, and I'm sure it's given us all a lot to think about and digest. So once again, thank you so much for availing yourself to speak here. And thank you to all of those that attended, and a special thanks to Kagiso from the LIASA office, who helped us with the coordination of this webinar. And we will, from RETIG side, be having webinars on a monthly basis up until about September this year, just before conference. So please just look out for those invitations, and thank you for supporting us. I think if there's nothing else, then we can just say goodbye and thank you once again, everybody, for attending, and Gift for being our speaker. And thank you also to Marupene for helping out with the webinar. Thanks so much. Thank you. Thanks. Bye, everyone.